There is much to be said about metallic dragons and what they are like. They are known for many things, such as being the good faction of dragons for those of a more simple mindset. But I would argue that those of a good nature are just as capable of committing the most evil acts. And my main case in point for this are the bronze dragons. See, most metallics try to embody both lawful and good qualities at the same time. But sometimes there's a bit of an argument when it comes to ideology. Good or law must come out on top on one argument. Golds refuse to answer, and they must find a balance in some other way. Silvers side with good over law in a debate. But bronze dragons will side with law over good. They embody law like paladins of justice, and often travel the land seeking to smite evildoers and outlaws. And they enjoy doing so, but there is a slight contradiction in this regard. See, they enjoy conflict, but hate killing. They fight often for what is right, but do not like to take a life, which is why they are one of the few types of dragons who actually take prisoners. And in taking these prisoners, they might force them to have recompense for their actions. This might be smaller things like paying a tribute in retaliation, but this could be darker things such as using them as labor. And it's clear to see in quite a few ways where this can start to draw the line. But to them, this is wholly justified. See, good and evil are subjective in a few regards, and most humanoids like us are usually subjective. We tend to treat things on a case-by-case basis. But dragons are greater than us, and subscribe to a sense of a more cosmic morality. If evil truly exists, you are wholly justified in any means or actions to end it. But to us, these actions may seem quite evil. These types of acts are inexcusable to us, but to bronze dragons this is not only absolutely fine, but completely justified and the right thing to do. It is the reason they are one of the only types of metallic dragons I am not fond of. At this point I must admit my personal bias against these types of dragons. I am an unreliable narrator in this regard, and I feel like I must state this, I feel obliged to. But the fact that I, someone who works with most types of the dreaded dragons, including their hated chromatics, have a grudge against these types of dragons, should imply that there is something off about their nature. With all of that in mind, I will try and talk about their nature without letting my bias affect it too much. So, I will start with how social they tend to be. See, they love to be social with other types of dragons, to the point where they love being with them more than they don't. It's quite common to see a group of bronze dragons travelling together or forming allegiances together and holding meetings quite often. They even do this with other types of dragons. They are usually the first among metallics to try to reach out to other types of dragons for peace talks or maybe even any other form of diplomacy. They might even try to bond with them and try and form a genuine allegiance. But keep all of this in mind, that they are only social in this regard with other dragons. They do not want to interact with others, like humanoids. They just don't think it's worth their time. They hate debating such things with what they see as lesser creatures. They don't want to talk about the likes of ethics and law. Debating is something they view as a powerful tool that should not be used by the worthless. And that is a word they've actually used before. Worthless. They know they are right, and that they are greater than you, and so why would they discuss the matter at all? So, to call them social would be a bit misleading. True, they are social, but they are also elitists and racists in a way. They won't socialize with other types of beings. This is what sets them apart most from other metallics, despite the fact that they are through and through aligned with them in all regards. Right, well I think it's time I get to the standard information about them, and I'll start with what they love to keep in their hordes. And I'll begin with the thing that they actually deny they have a love for, and that is solid gold. Coins as well as bars. They have a large fondness for it, but would never admit it. See, deep down, they think gold is the root of all evil, and it's quite an understandable belief. But their own love and want for it is something they try to deny, for fear that they're actually wrong about their ideology. Another bizarre like of theirs is military regalia and equipment. See, they like to travel around and fight evil, and sometimes you just can't do this alone, and when the likes of other dragons aren't available for help, they want to turn to more official means. So when they do work with humanoids, they don't like the types of adventurers and parties, but standard armies and knighthoods, proper orders of military renown. Oh, also statues. They have a bizarre love of statues. It doesn't really matter what they are of, or what they are made of. It's just something they're very fond of, and they find appealing, to the point where most have a statue, or possibly even a small collection of statues. They also love pearls more than any other type of gemstone, but this might have something to do with actually where they lair and claim domain. See, they actually live on the coast, where the water meets the land, and they probably spend just as much time in water as they do land. In fact, them and black dragons are the only type of common dragons that can actually breathe underwater, and are highly aquatic. It's quite common to see them both swim, but bronzes are far more likely to live underwater. They have their own lives and opportunities, and it also explains their favourite food, that being sharks. Bronze dragons absolutely adore the taste of shark. It's probably the main reason they spend a lot of time in the water. They love hunting for their favourite meal, but for all the time they spend underwater, they do not lair there. See, their eggs can't hatch underwater, and having water throughout the lair for all of the day is just not that comfortable. So, despite that they spend most day underwater, they lair on the coast, where the land meets the sea. So a small island off the coast, or perhaps just a coastal cave, would work perfectly for them, provided the water doesn't raise too high. But regardless, wherever they were to lair, they try to extend their power into both the sea and the land around it, in equal measure. This is something that very much sets them apart from other dragons. They put equal importance to the sea as they do the land below them. This is why they're decent neighbours, as they tend to keep their allegiances, but also like the sea just as much as the land, something most don't care about. But out of all metallic dragons, I firmly believe if you're a good person, you are most likely to come into conflict with a bronze dragon. And for that reason, I will go into detail on how to fight them. First off, they have two breath weapons, a classical lightning breath, in which of course they're immune to, but a stranger repulsion breath. This is a breath that pushes away things harmlessly, as if shooting a steam geyser from their mouth, something that helps them incapacitate foes that they don't have to kill. They are less likely to use traps than other dragons, but don't get me wrong, they still use them commonly, but they don't go all out with theirs, and theirs are actually much less likely to try and harm and kill you, and more so to trap and imprison you. They are also less likely to be alone than other dragons, given that they keep quite a few allies, not just their kin, but soldiers under their command, or perhaps even a small knight order, or maybe even a company of mercenaries. They might even take the sorts of a militia from a local town to serve under them. They have a lot of these likes when it comes to allies. In fact, like some chromatics, they might even take hold and control over lands directly, maybe even taking on whole settlements, or perhaps even a whole kingdom on the coast. They are even likely to do so with force, should they feel justified, or if the land has fallen to evil. This can be one of the ways they start to turn tyrannical. But, like I said earlier, they are quite social with their own kind. It's quite common to find them travelling together and working together. In fact, bronze dragons form allegiances and defence pact with their neighbours, regardless of what type of dragon they are, should they be willing, of course. But it's quite a common sight to see many young bronze dragons travelling and maybe even playing together, perhaps even sometimes disguised as maybe a flock of birds or a pack of wolves. They will of course split up in their later lives as they age, but keep in mind, this is hundreds of years we're talking about, where they are children just playing around. Their lives are far much longer than ours in this regard. There are some strange regional effects that bronze dragons tend to have on their domains too. Well, they have some of the more usual ones, like controlling the weather of the lands they hold dear, but they do this both underwater and above it as well. But they do have some bizarre effects. For example, the underwater plant life might take on strange glowing hues of colour that are quite beautiful to behold, and might even change before your very eyes. They also make a lot of illusions appear throughout their domain as well. This can take many forms, such as sounds and whispers being heard of those who enter the domain unwanted, but also the visage of a dragon might appear under the water, while ghostly ships might appear on the surface. but these illusions may have different purposes depending on what the dragon wants, as they are quite versatile. But I think it's the main reason I should state the bias I have against bronze dragons, and tell you a tale that I share with them. To put it bluntly, I was once an ally to a bronze dragon for quite some time. I even travelled with them for a short occasion. Ekioden was his name, and I once considered him one of my greatest friends. But now, I feel sorrow when I hear that name. Theirs is a tale of slow descent into evil while holding the guise of good. And I suspect, deep down, he truly thought he was good, even until the end of his days. This tale starts when I was but a young wizard. I was being attacked by a small company of hobgoblins. Alone I fared, and after taking down 3 of their number, a club smacked the back of my head, and I was sadly bested. But when I awoke, I did not see the vestige of the hobgoblins. I saw the vestige of a knight in shining bronze armor, who saved me. It didn't take too long for me to realize that it was actually a dragon in disguise, something he was actually quite surprised about, as he thought he was being subtle, believe it or not. Regardless, he took a great fondness for me, and I him. So, he kept me by his side for a while, and we journeyed briefly for a few years before parting ways again. We met again years later, and I had found that he formed an order of knights in hope of upholding law and justice. They were known as the Knights of the Resting Sun, and they took up armor of bronze, like their master. The knights also took a wardship of a small coastal town known as Narvin. While there, I helped him deal with an abhorrent beast known as an aboleth, but more on that tale another day. Regardless, we were victorious, and I departed again on good terms. He even gave me a gift, a magical necklace that would let me detect when evil was nearby, as it would glow when so. But something was nagging at the back of my mind after the fight. See, the aboleth had slaves, and Ekioden decided that they were heathens and unredeemable. Something I sadly agreed with, as their minds were warped and corrupted. But I suggested a swift death to put an end to their misery. But Ekioden wanted to put them to work in the mines of his town, so that their body would redeem that of their soul. I was uneasy by his decision, but I had little say in the end. I still left on good terms, though. It was years later until I heard of him again, and in less fond regards. A refugee from Narvin had informed me of its current state, a fort town ruled by a tyrannical dragon that casts down and enslaves those who stand against him and his bronze knights. I thought something was amiss, and feared that Ekioden had been slain and something else taken his lands. So I made haste to the lands of my friend. When I arrived, I found his words to be true. Chained prisoners of war walked the streets, carrying cargo mined from the nearby rocks. Families fleeing the sight of the bronze knights patrolling with an iron fist, beating those who disobeyed. I readied for a fight, but once I saw Ekioden fly down and land before me, greeting me with a smile, as if everything was normal, I knew this situation was complex. He was not charmed nor enchanted, and was of his own free mind and will. He invited me into his lair, and I demanded to know what had happened to his home. He promised to explain everything once I followed him. He then explained to me, in his human form, of his recent epiphany. See, humans are not a full mind, nor as grand as dragons. Our chaotic nature was not to be trusted, so he would demand law with an iron fist with those who understood his morals. For if humans are not given the option to sin, they would not do so. I asked about the slaves working in his mines, and he assured me that they are not slaves, but prisoners of war, repenting for their sins. I saw little difference, but he started to grow weary of this talk, thinking the debate was over, and I pleaded to him, my friend, again to reconsider. He disregarded me again, saying that I, as a human, just couldn't understand, and I grew sorrowful. I looked at the necklace he had given me, as a friend, and as I feared, it glowed, indicating evil was nearby. Now, it might have meant something else was lurking, or perhaps in his prison, but in the moment, I took it as him. He turned his back to me, and I shackled him with my magical chains, and swiftly struck at him with my dragon-slaying weapon. He died pretty quickly as my strike was precise. The only word he could gargle through a bloody mouth was "why," as he dropped and reverted back to his true dragon form, the wound growing with his size. I did what needed to be done. I was thanked by many, but hated by just as many so. I did the right thing, I have no doubt in my mind. But was he truly evil? I cannot say. This story taught me, as well as I hope it teaches you, that morality is subjective. After that, I cast the necklace aside, throwing it into the ocean. The memories were too bitter, but that is my tale of a bronze dragon. The one that I think needs to be said to explain my opinion on them. Thank you for listening to my tales. I am the Ashspawn. Feel free to leave a like, comment, or subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me. But, till next time we meet, fellow traveller, have a good day.